test. The front page then is very simple. And straight away, it tells you the number of marks and the number of questions. Now, I personally find this quite useful information. You may not, but I would say that knowing the number of marks allows you to have a rough idea of the number of marks per minute. So you know that it's a 2-hour test with 120 minutes and 100 marks to gain. So you're probably looking at a goal of a mark a minute to leave you 20 minutes to go back and check. You're unlikely to hit that timing. Remember that the pass is very hard. Very few people get those highest marks. We only have about 10 people a year who are scoring kind of high 90s in this test. So you're unlikely to keep to the pace the whole way through. Don't panic, but it gives you a good guide. The front page, as you scroll down, also reminds you that there are no tables, formula sheets, or physical calculators to be used. You may only use the on-screen version. There are no exceptions to this. There is no scenario in which you will be able to take your own calculator in, and there is no scenario which will allow you to take in a table booklet or a formula sheet. So it's critical that you have a look through the syllabus and figure out what you need to learn. Okay? It also tells you that numbers on the right-hand side indicate the marks expected to be assigned to each question, and it gives you that little bit of advice that I just said. Divide your time according to the marks available. And you can then head into the test. Once you head into the test, you've got some basics available to you. So you can change the color scheme if you choose to, or you can just keep it exactly as it was. But either way, you can have a look through and decide. You can also access the calculator by clicking up here, and it brings up, as I said, a very simple calculator. Lots of functions that you might be used to having at school are disabled. It is a super simple scientific calculator, really with no more than you'd be using in your first couple of years of secondary school. The first big thing that I noticed when I came through this, though, is not that the calculator is available, not any of those other things. What I noticed is that because it's a multiple choice that you have to scroll through, you can't have a flick through the paper to see all the questions before you start. And because the PAT is quite hard, when I first saw this, I thought, oh, I wonder how that's going to work. But now that I've had a bit of a practice, I think I know how I would do it. You don't need to take this advice at all. But what I want to do today is show you the way I would do it to give you even just the process of thinking about how will I tackle this in a couple of weeks. So what I think I would do is I would work through very quickly. And there are some questions that I know I'm going to be able to answer. And I'll answer those. I'm then going to use the flag for review option. You can see I'm hovering over and it's coming up in yellow. For any questions where I think I can definitely do this, but I'm going to need to think about it. And I would leave any questions that just look really hard. I definitely don't know this. Blank. So I'm giving myself 3 options. Either answer it, work it out and answer it. Say, hard, but I'll come back to it, flag for a review. Or say, I don't think I know this, and leave it blank. And I would scroll through the whole test, probably spending about a good chunk of time on that. Okay? My reasoning for this is going to become clear as we do this. So we're going to work together a little bit. But let's get you involved. I'm going to turn on the chat because I want to know your answer to the question on the screen. What's the next number in this sequence? Please don't put anything else in the chat just now. Remember, I've got a full half-hour blocked out for you guys to throw all your questions at me. So all I want you to do is when I turn the chat on, tell me what you think the answer to this question is. Right, get to it. Let's see what you guys all select. Oh, confident, right. While the rest of you come through, I'm going to start scrolling through. So on screen, Now, I'm going to cheat a little bit. I need to get through 40 of these questions before I can get to the final screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a mixture of exactly what I told you. I'm selecting an answer for some. I'm going to flag some for review. Now, what is really useful, if you have a look at your screen at the moment, is that if you don't scroll the whole way down, you get a little notice pops up that says, you haven't actually looked at the whole screen. Are you sure you want to select an answer? And that's great because it means you're not going to miss anything. You are going to physically have to scroll all the way down to find that answer. So I'm going to flag that one for review. I'm going to pick a random answer here, and I am genuinely selecting random answers. I'm going to leave the next three blank. I'm going to say, oh, those are way too hard. I'm never going to manage that. And say, I can definitely do that. I'm just going to need a bit of time. Oh, love a bit of resistors. I'm going to select that answer A, B. I'm going to scroll through. I'm on question 12. You've got to bear with me until I get all the way to question 40. But thank you for all of your suggestions. I like that you're all getting to it pretty quickly. And for anyone who has not yet had a look through the test, hopefully this is giving you an idea that you are going to need to get all the way through it. But it's all pretty simple to use. It's nicely laid out, nice and clear. You're going to be able to zoom in and out if you have any access arrangements that make that a problem for you. We've made sure that all of the diagrams zoom as well, because sometimes we have the issue where things are saved as images and they don't zoom particularly well. Hopefully that's not going to be an issue this year. It's something we've been thinking about. I've made it to question 27. Wish me the very best of luck. Thank you everyone for listening so well to my instruction as well and keeping the chat very clear for me, because it means I can focus on the 3 different screens I've got, all of their different sharings, the enormous number of questions that I'm skipping through, and keep an eye on the chat. Love a bit of solar eclipse. I'm going to leave that. Oh, I'm getting a warning that I didn't see all the pictures. Where have I got to? 34. I'm almost at the end. And it will become clear why I really want to show you this process. So imagine you were doing this slowly in the exam. This process is probably going to take you maybe an hour just to go through and mark. I'm going to do that one and find the actual answer. I'm going to say I'm going to come back and do that later. I'm never going to be able to answer that. I can answer that. I'm going to work through it. And all the while you'll be doing your working on your whiteboards, using the calculator and all those things. Now, once you get to the end, so I've scrolled all the way through, because once you get to the end of the paper, having done that, you come to this really useful last screen, and hopefully it will all become clear why I recommend going through the paper once with those 3 categories. This is because when you get to the end, it provides you with a review screen, and you will be able to see I answered those questions. So I've done my working, I've answered those. I might want to check my answers, but I know that those are done. I can also see I've flagged this one. So I'm going to go back to that one. I'm going to figure it out. And that's going to be my next set. And then I can see the ones that I skipped completely. I didn't flag them and I didn't put an answer in. Those are the ones I'm going to go back to last, see if I can figure them out with the time that I've got available, and just select an answer that seems sensible. If not, because it's multiple choice, there's no point in leaving blanks. But once you're on this screen, you no longer have to work through it in order. So you have to work through it in order once, but after that, you're able to go back to the question, go back to question 4, one that I flagged for review. I'm able to read through it, select an answer at complete random, and then I can go back to the review screen. So I'm now able to jump back and forth. And for me, that is the benefit to having those 3 categories as I go through it. You absolutely do not have to follow my advice. You are all individuals and you can come up with a method that works for you. But what I really wanted to show you today was an idea of how an online paper might be tackled. Because inevitably you are going to tackle it differently to a paper, like a physical paper. Because a physical paper, you're able to flick back and forth. You might be somebody who absolutely sits down and works from the front to the end to see how far you can get. You could try that here, but I would recommend, because the PAT is a hard paper, you will probably run out of time if you take that approach. The PAT is definitely a test that lends itself to thinking about what you can answer well. So I would recommend having a play and having an idea of what the best technique for you is going to be. And you can use this test as many times as you like to practice that technique and decide what is going to work for you. And that's the most important thing, is that it works for you. Let's go back to my online test screen now. So I've already told you, make sure you keep an eye on the number of marks per minute to give you an idea of timing. You're not going to stick to it, absolutely not, but it just gives you an idea. I've given you my suggestion for tackling the paper, which is to do a first pass through, answering your confident questions, leaving definite no's blank for now, and flagging questions that you think you can do but need a bit more time for, and then using the review screen to address those questions and manage your time for the remainder of the exam. When you get to the end, don't forget to submit your answers. We'll actually need to press I'm done and exit the test. And the only other thing I want to say in this section is use the calculator. Have that practice test open and use that calculator as your calculator for the next few weeks until you are absolutely ready to use it in the PAT. So you don't need to do any of the questions. You can just open up this test, open the calculator, and use it while you're doing your maths, physics, chemistry, any homework over the next 6 weeks. Use that calculator. Get used to it until it is as quick as using your own. It functions in exactly the same way. You literally just hover over it and push the buttons with your mouse. Not usually touch screen, so you will actually need to click with your mouse. But it works in exactly the same way. There's nothing weird like using a phone calculator where sometimes you need to use reverse operations. It's exactly as you'd expect a calculator to be. Okay, you have a keyboard as well. So if you look back at those pictures of the test center, you can see the setup. You've got your screen, you've got your keyboard. So use the calculator over the next few weeks. Now, one thing I also want to come back to is, just like when we looked at the online test, no, you cannot use your own calculators. That's exactly what I was saying. No online calculators, no own calculators, no formula sheets. You must use the online calculator. And there will be no exceptions to that. So we looked at the online test, and when we did that, I was aiming to show you the little... Okay, guys, I'm just going to switch off the chat for this. There we are. So you can go back and you can look at the calculator yourself and get used to it. So you've got plenty of time to do that. Now, when I was aiming to show you, what I was aiming to show you in that section, our previous section, all about the online test, was that small techniques to your usual exam technique to adapt to the online format can make the online format much less intimidating and also make you more successful at sitting an online test. There are similar tweaks to your question answering technique that can make answering multiple choice questions much less daunting and make you much more effective at them, allowing you to show your lovely best self to us, because that's what we want. We want to know what you're good at. And the most important thing about this is to remember that even if multiple choice is not something you're particularly used to, we are. So a lot of questions we've had since we announced we're going with this technique is, how are you going to know what we did wrong? How are you going to know how far we got if you don't see our working? Now, what we've done in the testing team is we've looked back at years of marking the PAT. And actually, if we see just an answer, we've got a really good idea of how you got to that answer. That means that the answers that we have provided as multiple choice options are all meaningful answers. They are answers that you could arrive at by trying to solve the problem. So none of them are, I've just got to put down 4 options. Absolutely not. We spent a lot of time making sure that all of the answers give us a huge amount of information. That means we've got a really good idea of the path that you took to get to an answer from the answer that you select, even if the answer isn't the one that's technically correct. And that's why the questions are not going to be a straightforward 1 or 0. And it's why we're going to look at which answer you selected, not just your overall mark. So we're not just going to have this person got a 40, this person got 60, this person got 80. We're going to know what answers you selected. And that's going to give us a really good idea of what you were doing. So we kind of know how far from the correct method you deviated. So from our point of view, we're really confident that we can find out a lot about your physics and maths abilities from multiple choice. But from your point of view, tackling these questions might feel a bit different to tackling long form questions. And although lots of tests are multiple choice, it might not be a test format that you are particularly familiar with. And that's why I want to suggest just a few tweaks to your exam technique to point you in the right direction. The most important thing to recognize is that multiple choice questions have answers. And that means that you can and should use the answers to inform your problem solving. You don't just have to work through a problem as if the answers weren't there and then select the answer which most closely matches at the end. You can use the answers as you go to help you work through the problem. So for example, you can look at the units given in an answer and see if that gives you a clue as to what quantities you might need to figure out. Okay? You can look to eliminate answers, and you can look to eliminate answers based on order of magnitude. So you might have a look at a question and think, actually, there's just no way the answer is going to be that small. There's no way it's going to be that big. That answer is greater than the speed of light, so it seems unlikely. That answer is stronger than the magnetic field that I would find in the center of a star. That seems unlikely. These are also really good numbers to have a handle on so that you can kind of common sense check and order of magnitude check. I've already mentioned you can use the answers to help the units to help inform you of the quantities which you need to find. But you can also use those units to eliminate. If not all of the sets of units are the same, you might have a few where you know which units are more appropriate. The other way you can use the answer is by plugging them back into the question to see if they're plausible. You won't be able to do this for all of them, but it could be really helpful for the questions that you flag for review. So when you're working through this paper, the ones that you answer straight away, you might not be using the answers very much. They're probably ones where you know how to do it. The ones that you flag for review are ones that you've decided are trickier. And here you might find it really useful to actually make use of those answers, to look at what we've got and to put them back in and to see which ones are plausible. And for the questions that you've left blank, the ones that you've said, this is really hard, I don't know this, you will be able to make a selection. You don't just have to leave it blank, unlike in a long form answer. And you can make a much more educated guess by using the answers to inform that. Now, let's have a look at some previous PAT multiple choice questions, because although the PAT has changed format over the years, it has quite frequently had multiple choice in it. So I'm going to go to the 2012 paper. No surprises. I found this paper through that first link on our main Oxford site. So here is a 2012 paper, and this question is kind of similar to some of the questions that I'm going to set you in problem set 3. And here you start to get an idea of the variety of multiple choice answers that we can present you with. So we're told a massive slider starts from rest from a point S, which is at the same point as a point T at the top of the track. It slides along a frictionless circular track as sketched in the figure below. The slider, and then you've got some options. Slider either doesn't get to T, slider gets to T and then falls straight down, The slider gets to T, then leaves the track and falls down following a parabola trajectory to the left, or it passes T, staying on the track all the way through. Let's open up the chat. Let's see what our consensus is. Lots of answers coming through, and interestingly, lots of different answers. Now, some people are sending their answers just to me because they don't want to share them. That's absolutely fine. But I can tell you that so far, I have seen a good representation of every single option, which should tell you why our answers are not straightforward ones or zeros. Now, for me, I think the key to this problem is that it is a frictionless circular track. That means we're not going to lose any energy throughout. So kinetic energy, which our slider block will have at the bottom, is going to be exactly equal to all of the potential energy at the top. We can have complete energy transfer from potential down to kinetic. Then we're going to work our way back up. Because we're working to the same height, I would say that all of our kinetic energy is transferred back into potential when we get to T. When we get to T, we have zero kinetic energy. We are at rest because we started at rest at point S. So to me, I'm pretty sure that we would fall straight down. I think we would only continue to fall following a parabola if we had an initial velocity. We don't share solutions to the past papers. And this tends to drive people a little bit batty. Quite often we don't even give you anything even resembling an answer. And the reason for this is we really want to know what your thoughts are. So here, more than one of these answers is going to get you a mark. One of these answers will get you 2. Other answers will get you a mark as well. And we will have a good idea of what you've been thinking from this. So have a look back through multiple choice questions. I've gone back to the 2012 paper, partly for that question, because it's really similar to the first question in problem set 3, but also because on the page before, there's a lovely range of multiple choice questions. You can see them all spread out there. And it gives you a real idea of the kind of answers that we can ask of you. So we've got some pretty straightforward, this is an answer. In the first question, if anyone's interested, we're going to be looking at ratios, the fact that mass is proportional to volume, and it's going to be a cubic proportionality constant. Whereas when we're then connecting into mass, we're going to be looking at a linear ratio. So you're looking at dividing by 6,500, but cube rooting it. So this is the past paper of 2012. So you can find all of these past papers on our website. So that's why I've not shared direct links to them. Because now that you have all the information about where of these all are, you're going to be able to go back to them. And any links that you've missed, you will be able to find tomorrow. So you're going to be able to go through all of these questions, and you're going to be able to look at different years. So if I flick forward to 2013, you can see a slightly different selection of multiple choice questions divided into both maths and physics sections. You'll be able to scroll through those and have a look. And if you have a look at the 2014 question, you can see that we had some multiple choice questions where you were selecting from statements and deciding which statements would be true. So the problem set tomorrow that I'm going to be sharing is long form questions. But when you look through it, I want you to try and think about what you would do differently if it were multiple choice. What key characteristics would you be looking for to eliminate answers? What numbers would jump out to you as wrong? And try to have that level of consideration for any questions that you tackle over the next few weeks. Okay? So always just be thinking when you look at these, what would I do if this was multiple choice? What's the key factor? What are the kind of numbers I'm looking for? What are the units that I need to be looking for? And just shift your focus over to how would I use this question to answer a multiple choice question? Have a look through all of our past papers. You'll get an idea of the variety of multiple choice questions that have been asked in the past. And that'll give you an idea of the range of things that we can ask and the types of answers that you will be selecting. So I have now taken you through the registration process. I've taken you through a huge amount of material this evening, actually, and I've talked at you for a very long time. So the chat has been reopened, but I'm also going to open the Q&A. Please only place questions in the Q&A, not in the chat, because otherwise I'm not going to be able to keep track of the chat and the Q&A. So any questions that you now have, hopefully I've answered most of them as I've gone, because we've covered a huge amount of ground.